and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Hey everyone, turns out there's a lot of talk about Bernie getting challenged in West Virginia, or either that bringing the heat to West Virginia. Now, again, I've said this on the show, better late than never, Bernie. But then again, you're almost too little too late at this point in the game. You should have been acting like this day one.
Agreed, but again, it's like we gotta be consistent. Bernie's trying to do something, so as long as he's trying to do something, we'll go, yes, okay.
Okay, fine.
That's something.
It's better than nothing. But anyways, we got this video from Case Study QB, and there's two different videos. So first, this is a clip from Fox News. And of course, there's going to be the bias from Fox News. So everyone brace yourself for the Fox News bias.
Only the most American content from a channel owned by the Australians and the Saudis.
So there you go. Let's go ahead and play this video where, again, there's commentary about Bernie Sanders being challenged or bring the challenge to West Virginia and what this means in the long run, especially possibly for 2022, and what this means for the Democrats, even though it'll probably mean nothing. Let's play this first video.
We continue to go to West Virginia, Trey. The vice president was there on television once trying to pressure Joe Manchin. This is an op-ed trying to pressure Joe Manchin. I don't think pressure from the left in West Virginia is the way to go.
You know, Brett, what I think would be great is if Bernie Sanders went to West Virginia. Somebody can show him how to get there. Don't write an op-ed. Actually go convince a state where Joe Biden won that many counties.
I mean, pause it.
Do we all remember this guy?
Well, not only do we, hold on, there's actually a correction. It was Bernie Sanders that was able to win in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. He was able to have a lot of high numbers in West Virginia. I think a lot of people forget that Bernie was had a very strong campaign until he decided to fizzle out.
And that, again, this is what's his name? Trey Gowdy is his name?
Yes.
Yeah, the guy who's trying to get you to look at his fingers right now.
Or trying to be Trump.
This guy was an absolute failure who fell into this, but it goes to what we've said before. I want to illustrate, use this as a moment to illustrate again for people. The people that are on cable news are the failed rich kids that they're not good enough for the family business. You have failed strategists or people that worked with candidates, such as Trey, who's here because he worked with Trump. Failed or retired candidates or think tank experts that are paid by the same people that usually pay for the network. So this guy trying to talk about how big his circumference of his butthole is that's why he's there. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, let's play the rest of the video.
How do you think Bernie Sanders is going to do? I mean, the moderate guy won 0 counties. How do you think the socialists will do in West Virginia?
Pause it again. We talked about it. He won West Virginia in the primary. Putting it out there. That's all.
Again, just remember, the fact is that Bernie had a very strong campaign. So let's continue playing the rest of the video if we can. Oh, it was over? All right. So let's go ahead and pull up this other video. And this has to deal with Ro Khanna talking about Bernie Sanders and Manchin meeting up.
Go ahead. He looks like a Bill Nye if he got hit in the face with a shovel. And then he did enough heroin that he was on heroin, but not enough to show it. But his body's now fading from it.
Okay, let's go ahead and play this video with Ro Khanna. Now, this has to deal with, I guess, how Senators and Manchin were talking, again, even though they're still having this quote-unquote feud about this $3.5 trillion budget bill. Let's go ahead and play this.
Really appreciate your time. Okay, you see that video of Manchin and Sanders together tonight. What do you read into that?
I think it's wonderful. I had suggested to President Biden that the two of them meet. I'm glad that they have met. It shows that they are working to resolve differences, to compromise, and everyone understands the stakes. We have to pass the president's agenda. Democracy is at stake. We have to show that we can govern.
Right. Of course, President Biden, when you had suggested, I believe, said it would be homicidal. But there they are. They did meet. So
It wasn't homicide.
So let me ask you about the deadline now, such that I understand it, right? That a vote on the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill is got to happen by October 31st. Manchin said today that that's not likely. So you may have a really big decision to make. Will you vote for the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan one, regardless of where the separate spending bill stands?
Aaron, it's not going to come for a vote. The president has said, the speaker has said that they have to come together. Let me just briefly explain why. When that bipartisan deal was negotiated, it was with 19 senators. There wasn't a single House member involved, not even the House Transportation Chair. We wanted to amend it. We wanted to add electric vehicle provisions. We wanted to add clean energy standards. The president and the speaker said, no, do it in the separate bill. So both bills have to move because we're not allowed to amend what the senators came up with.
Right, but part of the reason that they did that ostensibly with some of those things you mentioned is it wouldn't have passed the Senate. You know, it would have been an unpassable piece of legislation. Somebody like Joe Manchin wouldn't get on board. I'm wondering if ultimately, if you have to choose between getting that bipartisan bill or nothing at all, do you choose nothing or do you choose the bill?
I don't think that will be the choice. I think the choice will be we will come to a compromise and we will have two bills. Now, I do think we have to compromise on the Build Back Better agenda and sit down with Senator Manchin, lower under $3.5 trillion and come to an agreement. But I do believe we will have both bills, and I do believe there will be some strong climate provisions in them.
All right. So how do you think that happens with him? Because as you point out, right, it's not just that the numbers are incredibly different, right? It's actually the substance, right? Joe Manchin has said he wants a work requirement for the
All right, so let's go ahead and address another issue with this sit down that Manchin and Sanders are doing. This is all theater. This is all a show right now. It's a way to where, again, the Democrats can show unity, but Bernie isn't getting what he wants. The fact that Bernie right now is acting in this manner, in this capacity, says how much he has gambled on this $3.5 trillion budget bill. Now, again, within this bill, there's talk about removing a lot of the progressive policies that are in it. And the sad fact is, the real sad fact is that Bernie seems almost helpless, as do the progressives seem helpless in trying to make sure this thing is more robust. Again, quick reminder, $7 trillion. That's how much his budgetary bill was, $7 trillion. And they negotiated it down to 3.5, and now it looks like it's going to be 2.5, 2 trillion. That's the issue at hand. And I, for one, cannot just let this go by. When it comes down to bailing out Americans, we're struggling day in, day out. It's these corporations that are earning this huge amount of profit. Millions of Americans right now are wondering how they're going to make ends meet. And if we can't figure out how to bail out the American people, well, then all the kind words that Bernie Sanders is saying, especially about voting Democrat or supporting the Biden-Harris administration, won't add up to anything. There's a second follow-up video, again, with Ro Khanna talking about the sit-down meeting between Manchin and Sanders. Let's play it.
Tax credit. He doesn't want the paid leave policies in there. He's not fully supportive of community college being paid for. He's not for expanding Medicare, right? And obviously, he's not for the climate change provisions in the bill. That's a lot of not being for things. I mean, all those things to me would seem to be things that are core for you. Can you compromise and drop a few of them?
Well, Aaron, let me start with some of the positive. He came out today, Senator Manchin, for universal preschool. That was a positive. That suggests that he does believe in certain things with education. You can't have universal programs. On the child tax credit, he voted for the American Rescue Plan, which was means tested, but had much higher income levels than $60,000. I believe we could talk to him and say, look, $60,000 isn't a lot of money in California. We need to have higher thresholds, and I believe we can reason. But the most important thing is this. Senator Manchin cares about a lot of families, mining families, other families that have had pride in their work. And he needs to be assured that those families will have opportunities and jobs so that they have pride and not just a handout. It is our job to convince him that this will be a win for West Virginia and new jobs. And I believe we can do that. We should, frankly, earmark a certain amount of jobs for heavy fossil fuel states that they know that they will be able to deliver for families.
So the president's meeting tomorrow with a group of progressives. I know he met with the chair of your caucus, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, today, but tomorrow with progressives and moderates. Do you plan to be there, and what do you want to say to him?
I'm looking forward to it, and it's not about what I say to him. It's what he says to us. He's the president of the United States. I think it's time for us to follow him. He should offer a compromise that is fair, and we need to get behind him and get this done. And that is what I have indicated in the past. He has a lot of goodwill, a lot of trust in the caucus. It's time for him to lead and us to get behind his vision.
All right, Congressman, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's our takeaway from this entire conversation? The Democrats don't have a winning strategy at all, especially the progressives. The progressives had an opening the minute Biden was inaugurated into the White House. The progressives had the opportunity to actually fight for all the issues and policies and promises that they ran on for the 2020 election cycle. But they haven't followed through, especially with their silent, obedient consent of constantly compromising. The progressives were the ones that gave up on forced to vote for Medicare for all. The progressives were the ones that didn't fight back when Sinema and the other conservative Democrats in the United States Senate voted down for $15 minimum wage increase. It is the progressives, again, people like AOC, for example, who get bullied changing their no vote to a present. And then at the same time now, we're seeing them now yell at Sinema and Manchin. I'm glad that they're doing this. I want to make it very clear. I'm happy that they're doing this. Better something than nothing, but it's almost too little too late. And as I've reported on previous other live streams, as we have commented on different clips of this show, when you constantly, as a progressive, when you promise to bring the ruckus, but then you bow down to the establishment, what are you really running on? And what does this say to voters or your voting base in the midterm election cycle? And just a quick reminder, I keep repeating myself on this one, midterms statistically have a low voter turnout. It's a low voter turnout. You want to inspire people to come out to vote. And already there's a lot of political ammunition that the GOP, in all reality, can use against the Democrats. Because what have the Democrats delivered on? Not much. Daniel.
Yeah, so again, I'll say this another time after saying it a dozen times. This bill is, again, not even optimal, not even close. If it was optimal, it's a whole separate story, but it's not optimal. And of the non-optimalness of this human infrastructure plan, it's an F- if it was a paper. It wouldn't even pass. You wouldn't be able to graduate whatever school you're at if you turned in a midterm or a final paper that was as complete and, a complete failure as this bill is. So we're already talking about not the best piece of legislation at maybe 20 to 30% acceptable funding for the program. And they're cutting it already. That's what they're cutting it. And then Ro Khanna's like, when asked about why does no one bring up that every part of the bill is super popular with Americans? I feel like that's a thing that you can cut down any TV reporter on if they say, well, what about this? It's like, why don't you want to side with the thing that Americans do? And why does your reporting happen to side with the things that special interests want? And then when it comes to Joe Manchin, you have to force him into acting. And that means go into West Virginia. Now, as much as Fox News' Trey Gowdy's like, look at me while I talk, I can make this shape. Bernie Sanders did really well with West Virginians. It's like Bernie Sanders and the people that call themselves progressives always tend to they're like, we're going to race you with our speedboat. 1 second, let me drop my anchor first. So it's an even fight. We know exactly where they're going to end up. And it's either going to be a bill that's even lower, or they're going to try and cut away things. But what's true is that the stuff that is in the bill is very popular. It's a lot of useful stuff for Americans, and if Americans got it in a universal setting, the reason they don't want universal, the reason they want means tested is very simple. Universal programs do really well and maintain their popularity, such as Social Security, which... yeah, and things that aren't means tested become very divisive and are used politically to chop them apart slowly, such as food stamps. And so right now, what I really do appreciate at least is that this bill is intending to be universal, which I think is the right way to go here at Hard Lens and 99 Perspectives. We try to write every single rule that we put together universally so it affects everyone the exact same way, because that's the right thing to do. And if they cut away that part, or they cut away too many of the important programs, we've literally just done nothing. And the progressives at this point, if they really want to keep calling themselves, if they can't even get this bill passed, need to just stop Congress. Or something.
All right. I think that's a final note for this story. Bernie, bring the fight down to West Virginia. If you're actually going to really stand up to Manchin, you have a lot of support there. You had a strong following in West Virginia. If you are truly going to actually stand up against the Democratic establishment, it means actually going up against your so-called friends. They've lied to you. And there's one thing I can't tolerate, and that is someone who's a liar and can't keep a consistent fact. If you're going to be lying, admit it. And sadly at this point, Bernie's been played a fool. Now, I do hope he somehow finds the ability to fight back, but with this $3.5 trillion budgetary bill fight where it's going, it's looking like the Democrats are walking into a disaster.